In other news, China is set to impose new national security law on Hong Kong and Macau after it said it would establish enforcement mechanisms to safeguard national security.
China intends to impose new national security laws on Hong Kong, an official confirmed on Thursday, potentially sparking new anti-Beijing protests following last year's often violent unrest, which plunged Hong Kong into its deepest turmoil since it returned to Chinese rule in 1997. Hong Kong media outlets reported the new laws would ban secession and terrorism, and all seditious activities aimed at toppling the central government or foreign interference in the former British colony. Attempts to impose similar laws in the past have met strong resistance. Activists argue it would erode the city's freedoms and high level of autonomy. Opposition lawmakers said this was the end of Hong Kong as they knew it. This was Tanya Chan.
Today, I think that it's the saddest day in Hong Kong history. It confirms one country, one system.
The Chinese official was speaking at a late-night briefing ahead of China's annual parliamentary session, which starts on Friday. Online posts urged people to gather in protest before Parliament meets. The legislation could also prompt Washington to remove Hong Kong's special status. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has delayed a report assessing whether Hong Kong is still autonomous enough to qualify for that status, awaiting the outcome of the parliamentary session.
Here to tell us more is China correspondent Elizabeth Law. Liz, a draft decision was submitted to the National People's Congress today. If it goes through, it paves the way for a national security law to be enacted in Hong Kong. Was this move expected, and what does this now mean for the city?
Hi, Dylan. Hi, Olivia. So, yes, I mean, it is not surprising that this move has come about. I mean, after all we've seen in the last close to a year where there were these very angry protests and the sort of rhetoric that was coming out of China. And I think most significantly in the last few weeks where Hong Kong was now trying to push through a national and a law that will make it an offence to insult the national anthem. And just earlier last week, we heard the local liaison office saying that it was their prerogative to interpret Chinese laws in Hong Kong under Article 22 of the Basic Law. So I think this is an indication that sort of paves the way for what we're seeing today. Now, to go back to the earlier part of your question, what does this mean for Hong Kong? So. Basically, the NPC, the National People's Congress, is, for all intents and purposes, a rubber stamp parliament. Whatever laws are being presented will most likely 100% get passed through. So they will debate it on Tuesday and Thursday, and on Thursday afternoon, they will now put this to a vote. After this is voted, the decision is now enshrined in the NPC, and it will go into Hong Kong's basic law in a third annex. And this means that now Hong Kong is obligated to have to follow what some of this decision sets out. So it's a 7-point decision, of which I will not go through it. It is quite a lot of it. But one very key point that has a lot of people very concerned is that it has a line that says Chinese security organizations won't be able to set up units in Hong Kong.
Liz, how detrimental would the new national security law be for the one country, two systems model, and what does it mean for future Hong Kong-China relations?
So this is, again, a two-part question. How detrimental is it going to be to one country, two systems? It really depends on who you ask. If you ask Beijing, they are doing this precisely because they are trying to preserve the one country, two systems policy. Their interpretation of one country, two systems is to make sure that Hong Kong is as much as possible integrated with the mainland in terms of laws, in terms of the perspectives towards policy and their outlook to the world. But of course, to a lot of Hong Kong people, and definitely to the pro-democracy protesters, they feel that Hong Kong needs to maintain its unique identity and a separate identity from the rest of mainland China. So for the pro-democracy protesters, definitely this is not a good sign. Many people are saying, including a lot of analysts I've spoken to, that basically this is the end of one country, two systems as we know it. For mainland Hong Kong relations, well, certainly Hong Kong still is a very important city to China. In the speech when the NPC members, the senior NPC member Wang Chen was introducing this draft decision that is being presented, he did say that one country, two systems has been highly successful in Hong Kong, but more needs to be done. So clearly, to them, it's still very important. But I think tensions will get a lot higher between the people and the governing class.
Now, Liz, let's shift our attention a little bit. Also brought up in the NPC, China didn't set a GDP target this year due to the pandemic. Why is that significant?
So this is literally the first time ever since the formation of the People's Republic of China that there has not been a GDP growth target. So why a GDP target is important is because it gives the various provinces and the various governments and even companies a sort of idea how much or how well they need to perform to be able to meet the government's targets for the year. So it sort of sets the pace for everyone to get about the business. The thing is that this GDP for the last few years, let me just go back a little bit. In the early 2000s, this GDP exponentially just kept growing, double-digit growth year on year. And then gradually in the last few years, we've been seeing that this number has been going down. And of course, China is very sensitive about it because they do feel that, we are a strong rising power. We do need to try and keep up this large number. So last year, the number was 6.1. And so this year, a lot of people expected, before the pandemic, people expected it to be around there as well. But clearly, because of this economic shutdown and the global economic slowdown, this is no longer possible. And I think rather than try and meet an impossible target or try and put a quantitative number to it, what they have instead released is a set of guidelines and a set of goals that they want to reach. So which includes creating 9 million jobs, which includes more fiscal help for companies. And very broadly, they also said that they would try to support small, medium and micro businesses in the bid to try and prop up the economy.
Before we wrap this interview up, Liz, you'll be involved in the Straits Times askST at NLB podcast, available now. Tell us more about that.
Well, so that is coming from something that I've spoken a lot on here. So I'm not going to talk more about it. Viewer, if you are watching this, please just go click on the link and listen. It's basically about what I saw and what I did in Wuhan, as well as what lessons the opening up of Wuhan and the rest of China can offer to Singapore.
Well, thanks so much, Liz. That was Straits Times China correspondent Elizabeth Law. Her podcast is available on the Straits Times audio features channel on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts.